Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 3, Nature of Indian Diversities and Nationalist Responses. And we start with topic language homogeneity or polarity. The question of linguistic diversity emerged in the form of debates over national or official language and the feasibility or desirability of linguistic provinces. At an ideological level, it appeared obvious to many that there had to be a national or official language, though there was no need for a national or official religion. What about continuing English as the official language? Even Nehru claimed that it was a foreign language and was not known to large masses of our people. But he took a moderate position on the replacement of English. In general, many nationalists like Tilak found the diversity of languages an obstacle to national unity and urged the need for a common language. He suggested that the Devanagari script may be used for all northern languages. Subsequently, the north centered composition of the Congress and the influence of Hindu Mahasabha contributed to Hindi in the Nagari script being elevated into a possible national language for free India. Gandhi too was keen on promoting Hindi, especially in the South. But the Southern experience was ahead in this regard. In 1938, Rajgopalachari, the then Premier of Madras, had introduced Hindi, whether in Nagari or Urdu script, as an optional subject, or as he put it, chutney on a leaf. Take it or leave it. And failure in the subject was not to detain promotion to higher grade. But his experiment nicely contributed to E.V. Ramasamy Naikar's popular struggle against Aryan impositions on Dravidian culture. This experience made Rajaji oppose Hindi imposition in post-independent India. Granville Austin has documented the extent to which Hindi supporters were to insist upon adoption of Hindi as official language. The Hindi extremists produced a Hindi constitution, which even Hindi speakers from North India found hard to understand given the Sanskritization of the same. Austin writes a Sanskritized translation would not only be unintelligible except to a tiny group of the initiate, but it was doubtful if a Sanskritized constitution could be superimposed on the base of parliamentary government and the British common law tradition to which the nation was accustomed and which assembly members wanted to retain. Finally, consensus emerged over the continued use of English for at least 15 years until the 1960s agitations over the issue again. A second issue to emerge was that of linguistic provinces, given that the British created multilingual states to forestall unity. The Congress had agreed in principle to creation of linguistic state, but Nehru was to move slowly on this issue after independence, and it only assumed silence in the 1950s. Now, the next topic is tribal revolts, civilize and preserve. Writing history from below, Sumit Sarkar notes how tribal communities have always revolted, often and violently, in India. Instead of being primitive savages confined to the forest, that kind of tribal survives only in romantic imagination and tourist brochures. Tribals are integrated into Indian society as the lowest stratum, as agricultural laborers, coolies, and so on. Commercialization of forests, land grabbing, and increasing emulsification saw many revolts such as Santal Rebellion, Munda Rebellion, and Alori Sitaraman Raju movement in Godavari region in 1922 to 24, to mention a few. Far from being sporadic or spontaneous, these movements revealed clear identification of targets, often landlords and moneylenders. Novel modes of political communication and consciousness of the interlinkages between local exploiters and alien rule. Writing about the market lootings in Midnapur when the prices of essentials soared in 1914 to 18. Swapandas Gupta observes that the Adivasis selectively attacked cloth merchants come moneylenders rather than grain merchants, for the former were more exploitative during hard times. The nationalists approached tribal primarily as illiterate masses to be civilized and enlisted into the mainstream. As with other lower caste groups, nationalists did not think of them as autonomous agents, creating their own history, or as groups which might have had agendas different from the Congress. This meant that at a practical level, they were mobilized and demobilized as per the needs of the Congress. This was evident in the case of Midnapur Adivasis rebellion between 1921 to 1923. The Congress began enlisting Adivasi in this region only around 1921 and successfully organized a strike against very low wages. They were paid 4 paise for carting wood up for 14 miles and 8 pieces for 35 miles. After intense struggle, a compromise was reached which allowed a Congress activist to monitor worker conditions in the jungles. The Congress undoubtedly channelized existing discontent among the Adivasis and extended it against paddy exports and foreign clothes. But subsequently, the struggle assumed its own dynamism. During non cooperation, and the Adivasis took to looting select stores. The withdrawal of non cooperation meant that their struggle was denied external links. So, when the Adivasis rebelled again in 1922 for traditional jungle rights, they were acting autonomously and Congress only backed them indirectly. The upshot of the above is that Congress' response to Adivasis or tribals paralleled its response to caste differences. The tribals were not seen as preservers of distinctive world view and values of their own. They had to be civilized and enlisted into the mainstream. As such, when they acted as agents on their own initiative for issues and rights which were important for them, they appeared isolated. This patternism flowed into the constitutional settlement, where there were several protectionist measures so as to preserve and protect the interests of scheduled tribes. Article 15, which bans discrimination on ground of race, caste, etc., explicitly allows for some provisions to advance SCs and STs. Article 19.5, dealing with the freedom of residence, allows special restrictions to promote the interest of STs in some restricted areas. Similarly, there are provisions for a special officer, national commission, and special grant in aid. Now let us have a look on the summary of the unit. There was no single nationalist response to the multiple levels of diversity in India. Further, all of these diversities did not come politically significant at the same time. They were slowly shaped and constructed as the basis of special or separatist demands over a period of time. On the caste and tribe question, the nationalists conceived their task primarily as one of the civilized, the downtrodden. As such, the response remained moral and social, but no political in the sense of empowering them for their own agendas. In the case of religious diversity, nationalists were quite ambivalent in practice towards both secularism and communalism. Hindu revivalists urged that they were not against any other religion or community, but implicitly conceived the Indian nation on the basis of Hindu ideas and symbols. Gandhi's religious tolerance was one response to religious diversity and perhaps a powerful response, given the living sense of the sacred in India. However, Gandhi's response was shaped by true faith and humility, which cannot be assumed to be mass virtues. Finally, Nehruvian response stemming from an intellectual skepticism and fear of religious passions was also inadequate from the standpoint of lived faith. It is necessary to appreciate that these responses were forged according to the imperatives of the national liberation movement. The nationalists often had to act according to their grasp of what was practically feasible. Despite the periodic drive for homogeneity, they measured up to the challenges posed by diversity. The constitutional provisions for the protection of interests of SCs, STs, and OBCs and minorities owe a lot to the nationalist response to the diversities. Now we want to wind up this lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thank you so much for your attention.